Welcome to lesson 7.2, circumference of a circle. Our objective for today, I can find the circumference, radius, and diameter of a circle. Hey, that's the objective from yesterday. How cool. So we're doing more review with circumference. So before we do that, let's review what circumference is. So remember, circumference is the distance around the circle. Another name for the circumference is the perimeter of a circle. Okay, so here our circumference is how far around the entire circle we must go. So to calculate the circumference of a circle, there's a special number called pi. So remember, pi is the ratio of the circumference to the diameter. So when we take pi, that is equal to the circumference, which is the whole distance around the circle, divided by the diameter. Now, what was the diameter again, Mrs. Wall? Well, the diameter was the distance across the circle from one side to the next through the center. That is called the diameter. So let's write that down here. Okay, so we need that to help us find the circumference. So remember, we have two circumference formulas. We have C equals pi d, or how I like to pronounce it, circumference equals pi d, pi d. And we have C equals 2 pi r. Now remember, r here stands for the radius, and the radius of the circle is the distance from the center of the circle to one outside edge. So this line right here is known as the radius. Okay, so because the radius is halfway across the circle and the diameter is all the way across the circle, that is why 2r is the same as the diameter, right? The diameter is twice as long as the radius. Okay, so remember our song, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, circumference equals 2 pi r. Make sure to use that today while you're working on these problems because you're going to be writing down that formula a lot. Okay, so for review, I just want you to take a moment to determine the circumference of each circle. So for these next two problems, I want you to pause the video, write down which formula you're going to use, plug it in, and make sure to read the directions carefully. All right, go ahead, pause the video and do that. All right, welcome back. So if we look at this first one, we had that it was the distance all the way across the circle, and that was the diameter. So you should have had C equals pi d, and the diameter is 26, and it said round to the nearest tenth. So I had to plug that in to get 81.7. The next one was halfway across the circle, so that was the radius. So I used twinkle, twinkle, little star, circumference equals 2 pi r. But here my radius was 11, so I got 22 pi, which really ended up giving me 69.1. All right, perfect. So now what I want you to do is find this third one. Go ahead, pause the video, and try number 3 on your own. Welcome back. So for this one, it gave us the diameter. So I wrote d equals 4.5. So I used pi d as my formula, plugged it in to get 14.1 feet. Okay. All right, so go ahead and flip the page. We have one more review that we're going to do, number 4. So it says the radius of a circle is 8.6 feet. Find the circumference of the circle to the nearest foot. Tenth of a foot, Mrs. Wall. So ready? It says radius is 8.6. So I have r equals 8.6. Well, twinkle, twinkle, little star, circumference equals 2 pi r. So I'm going to plug in 8.6 for r. So I have 2 pi times 8.6. Well, 2 times 8.6, that's going to give me, I don't know. Way to go, Mrs. Wall. Let's see. 2 times 8.6 gives me 17.5, but it said I had to round, so I'm going to put my pi in here, times my 17.6, and I got, did I do that right? 8.6 times 2 times pi. All right, and when I do that, I'm so sorry, we should get 54 rounded to the nearest tenth, 0.0. So my circumference is 54.0, and it was in feet, so I have feet here. Okay? All right, so now to the new part. Now we're going to work with word problems with circumference. So let's do the first one. A dog is tied to a wooden stake in his front yard. His leash is 3 meters long. If the dog pulls the leash as far as it will go and all around the circle, what distance will he go to the nearest meter? So for this one, I have to draw a picture. So here's my dog. Actually, that's a lie. Hang on. Red. That's my dog. Look at how cute she is. Okay, so here's my dog, this little dot. Okay, now she won't leave me alone. Okay, and here's where it's running. So there's how far it can run. So this is the farthest point, right? This is my dog stake. This is how far my dog can run. And it has to run all this way, right? And that distance that it can run in all circles, if you imagine you're running and your dog's chasing you, that would be the pattern it would leave, right? So it wants to know what distance he will go. So the distance is the circumference, because it's the distance around the circle that your dog can make. So I have circumference, but I have to figure out what formula I'm going to use. Well, his leash is 3 meters, and I can only go this far, so that means my radius is 3. So I'm going to do circumference equals 2 pi r, and my r is 3. So whenever we do word problems like this, I always like to draw a picture to get an idea of what it looks like, figure out what I know and what formula I need to use, and then just plug it in. So I have circumference equals 2 pi times 3. And when I do that to the nearest meter, that's the nearest whole meter, you should get 19 meters. Okay? Let's look at the next one. Keo used wire fencing to form a border around a circular region in his backyard. If the radius of the circular region, if the radius was 5 yards, what was the total length of the border to the nearest tenth of a yard? So tenth of a yard is where I'm rounding. And if it wants the length of the border, it wants the perimeter. It wants all of that pink. So that means I need to find my circumference. So here I go. Circumference equals, I have my radius, it's going to be 2 pi r. So circumference equals 2 times pi. Well, my radius here is 5. So I get 5 times 2 times pi. And I plug that into the nearest tenth of a yard. I should get 3.1 yards. Now, the cool thing about this that I don't think I showed you in either of the prior videos is when you're using your calculator on this, if we clear it, if I do 2 pi 5, it will give me exactly what I want, which is why that is not my correct answer, Mrs. Wells. Shame on you. The correct answer is 31.4 yards. Okay? All right, so the next one, the first Ferris wheel was built in 1893 in Chicago. Its diameter was 250 feet. Okay, well, I know that a Ferris wheel is round. Diameter is all the way across, and it's 250 feet. How many feet did the Ferris wheel rotate with one complete turn to the nearest tenth of a foot? Well, to rotate means it's going to turn. So if I'm here on my Ferris wheel, that's where my seat is, and I'm turning, I have to find how far around I'm going to go. Well, that's my circumference. So I'm going to write circumference equals, I have my d. So I'm going to use pi d, and diameter equals 250. So when I plug this in, c equals 250 times pi, and it says to the nearest tenth of a foot, so I'm going to plug that in, 250 pi, and I get 784 Mrs. Well, 0.4 feet. That's how round it would be. All right, what I want you to do is go ahead and try 4 and 5 on your own. So I want you to go ahead, take a moment, pause the video, try 4 and 5. Welcome back. All right, let's take a look. So here are my 4 and 5. Remember, this is an opportunity for you to practice while I'm not there, okay? So I really hope that you're not just looking at the answers. So I drew my picture for each of them. Now remember, the diameter equator goes all the way across and wants the distance around. So again, it would be circumference. Okay? All right, so now if we flip the page, we'll move on to the next problem. And so far, we've been able to find circumference given its diameter or its radius, which is beautiful. We love that. But what happens when we have to find the radius and the diameter given the circumference. Whoa, what? We're going to have to work backwards. So bear with me on this. You ready? It's super easy, I promise. The circumference of a circle is 10 pi. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to write down C equals 10 pi, right? I mean, it tells me right there, circumference is 10 pi. So my C is 10 pi. Then I'm going to write my formula, circumference equals pi d. Circumference equals pi d. So when I look here, I have a C and I have a C. I have a pi and I have a pi. But my 10 here is being replaced with my d in this equation. So guess what my diameter is? It's 10. How cool is that, right? 10 is my d. So if my diameter is 10, well, what's my radius? My radius is half of my diameter, so my radius is 5. It's that easy. So let's look at the next one. The circumference of a circle is 15 pi. So it says circumference, so C equals 15 pi. Well, we're always going to use the formula circumference equals pi d because that's the simpler one to use. So I have circumference equals pi d. What is my 15 being replaced with in this formula? The d, right? I have my c's, I have my pi's. So my diameter is 15. So what is my radius? Well, my radius is half of 15, which is going to be 7.5. Pretty cool, huh? All right, let's do a couple more just to make sure we've got it down. So the next one, the circumference is 9 pi. So C equals 9 pi. So circumference equals pi. 9 is being replaced with d. So my diameter is 9, which means my radius is half of that, which is 4.5. All right, number 4, the circumference of a circle is 12 yards. Oh, Mrs. Wall, what's going on in this one? There's no pi. Circumference equals 12. This is where it gets tough. My circumference is 12. So my circumference is also known as pi times d. So here's the cool part. If my circumference is 12, and my circumference is the formula pi times d, I can rewrite this so that my 12 equals pi times d, right? My circumference, which is 12, is pi times d. So now how do I get d by itself? Well, remember we're multiplying here and pi is a number. So if I drop my line, I can divide by pi. Sounds weird, but it works because pi is just a number. So on my calculator, I'm going to do 12 divided by pi. When I do that, I get 3.819. So that means my diameter is going to be 3.819, and it keeps going. So I have to do an approximate diameter. So to round to the nearest tenth, it's just going to be my diameter is 3.8. Okay. So now what is my radius? My radius is going to be half of that. So in my calculator, I'm going to clear it. I'm going to do my 3.8, which was my rounded one, divided by 2, and I get 1.9. So my radius here is 1.9. This one is tricky. If you don't understand number 4, that's okay. We'll continue to work on it when I get back, but 1 through 3 is really what we were focusing on for today, okay? So let's do one more together before you have your practice. So it says the circumference of a circle is 36.31 meters. Again, there's no pi there, but that's okay. Circumference equals 36.31. Well, circumference is also equal to pi times d. So I can take my 36.31 and that equals pi d because that is my circumference. Drop my line, divide both sides by pi to get d out by itself. I get that my diameter is 36.31 divided by pi. 11.6 when I round to the nearest tenth. So my diameter here is 11.6. Now, my radius is half of that. So if I take 11.6 and divide it by 2, I get 2.8. So my radius here is 2.8. Okay, so now what I want you to do is go ahead and practice these next 5 problems. Be very careful. The first 3 are really important, so do those first. If you don't get to 4 and 5, that's okay, but please try to get through as much as you can. Remember, there is a quizzes as your exit ticket before you go so that I can see how you're doing. All right, hope you had fun. Talk to you later. Bye.